Let's get started.
All right.
So welcome everyone. My name is Mary Eleanor Power, and I am the Director of Marketing and Communications for Dalhousie's Faculty of Open Learning and Career Development. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that Dalhousie University is located in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq. We are all treaty people. And thanks so much for joining us for today's webinar focused on our new project management certificate. And we have the pleasure of being hosted. The host for this webinar is Janice Petley. And I'll just provide a little bit of background on Janice, and then we'll throw it over to her so she can walk us through today's webinar. So Janice has over 20 years of project management experience, and her typical assignments are definitely project management, but are anything but typical. Her experience spans a wide range of projects, from classical theater at the Stratford Festival and symphony concerts in the United States to stadium and arena opera productions in cities such as Tokyo, Munich, and Brussels. Whether it was a large sporting event at the Rogers Center or an opera with a cast of 1,000 in a bull ring in Madrid, Janice has worked on high-risk, innovative, challenging projects. There is no greater introduction that I have given to anyone, Janice. That is the most fantastic visual bio. So without further ado, I will pass it over to Janice. And just one housekeeping note: if you have any questions, please feel free to add them into the chat. That's at the bottom of your screen. If you just hover over the bottom, the bottom strip, you'll notice the chat button. Please open that, add any questions, and we will most certainly get to them at the end of the webinar. Janice, over to you. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Thank you for that, for welcoming everybody. Great to be here. Great to see some familiar names on the participant list of people that have been in Project Management Essentials and a few of the other courses as well. So we're going to kind of walk you through what we're doing and why we're doing it, and how this program is going to be a little different than the one we are currently offering. But we want to make sure everyone is aware of the changes and also understands the reasons for the changes. So why? Why are we making these changes? Well, best practices change. It's constantly a moving target, especially because our environment has changed, and it's changed a lot in the last year and a half. So as a result, the PMBOK has changed. Now, it started changing long before we entered COVID last year, but the PMBOK has changed, and so then that is reflecting the best practices. So we also need to adapt to best practices according to the project management body of knowledge. So that's part of what we're doing here with this change. Also, people want shorter courses. It was fine when we had the work environment where we could go to a classroom and spend 3 days. There was a time when that was possible. That's really tough now. People are working virtually more often, and they don't have first of all, we don't have the courses in the classrooms in the same way, but a 3-day course in a classroom would become a 6-day course online because you'd go half days. And that's a large commitment. And that's not always fitting well within people's schedules. So what we wanted to do was give people shorter courses so the training would come in little bursts. And that way it was easier for people to fit into their schedule without losing their week at work or losing all their mornings at work that week, that sort of thing. So we wanted to give people a little more flexibility with the shorter courses. We also wanted to give people, depending on their industry, some options in terms of what would be the best optional credit for them. So now, how many people right now are in the certificate in project management, or actually have started PME, like Project Management Essentials, or perhaps have taken another course? So you can just write in the chat window on that, if you will. Just let us know if you already started, or if you're brand new and say, hey, no, I'm just going to start this right from day one. So we just want to get a sense if we're talking to people that are partway through, just started,
brand
or
new.
not started at all.
Hi, Erin. Brand new. That's awesome. I see some familiar faces here too.
It's all good.
That's great.
Okay, thank you. Gives us a sense of of where people are. So the new format, it's a virtual delivery. And we're going to go from 9 to 12:30 Atlantic. Now, that may seem like a long time to be staring into your computer, but we take a break every hour. So we'll break at 10 o'clock and then take a 15-minute break. And then an hour later, we'll take another 15-minute break. And then we finish at 12:30. So it isn't any time where there isn't any time when you've got a really long stretch where you're just dying for a break. It's never more than an hour, because that's best practice. We don't like doing more than an hour with people having to look at screens. It's eye strain. They're not able to get up and move around the same way. So that's the format that we're going to be using. Now, Project Management Essentials, this is the first course. This is the very first course. And there's a couple different ways we do this. Some, we used to do it in the classroom, of course. The offering we have currently running right now, which will finish tomorrow, it's actually 75-minute sessions, and then people do asynchronous work. We also have a version where we just do full half days, and we do it 6 times. And we may actually be back in the classroom again. I'm not going to promise anything, but it is possible that we may put this course back in the classroom for 3 full days. If any of these courses go in the classroom, again, this would be the logical one to put back in the classroom. If people have an equivalent course, they took the equivalent of a Project Management Essentials, if you can let us know that you've got that, show us the course, show us the description that you finished the course, we could potentially accept that as an equivalent credit, and then you could start launch into the next courses. So this is what we're looking at. Here's the program, first taken. So if we start on the left-hand side, we've got 3-day Project Management Essentials. That's mandatory. Then after that, there are a series of courses you can take in any order. So if you look at the right-hand side of the screen at the top, it says taken in any order. Those courses, I mean, it's logical to start with this 1-day engaging stakeholders and then to take tracking and forecasting and so on. It's logical to actually take them in that sequence, but you don't have to. You may say, I really can't start this till January. I'm just not available. Fine, no problem. You can hop on in January. And because it's not going to take up your life, it's just going to take up 2 half days. So when it says 1-day course, that's really 2 half days. So it's 2 half days, usually sequential. So it doesn't disrupt people's rhythm at work the same way it would if you had to leave the classroom for 3 days, especially if you had travel involved as well. Suddenly now you've lost your week of work. So the one little course that is a prerequisite for the 2 Agile courses is a half-day course called Choosing the Right Approach. And it is totally asynchronous. You can take that on your own time and work through that. But you do need to do that one before the 2 Agile courses. And so we've got the Being Agile and the Doing Agile. But let me just talk a little bit about each of these courses. So engaging stakeholders. So this is really stakeholder and communications is what this is, because everything kind of comes back to the people. We have to start with the people. You know, sometimes people want to start with the process, or they want to start with technology when they have a project, but it all has to start with people. People, process, technology. Who are the people? Who's being impacted? Once we figure out who the people are, how they're impacted, what their needs and expectations are, then we can start figuring out what their requirements are. We can figure out what we need to do with this project. The next one is the tracking and forecasting. That's essentially budget schedule. We still have to be good at this, budgets and schedules, even though now we have an emphasis on other sorts of things as well in the new PMBOK, but we do have to understand budgeting and scheduling. The 2 Agile courses. Okay, so that's Being Agile. This is about, as an organization, it's about our mindset and being agile and being adaptive as an organization, being able to adapt to change. And then the Doing Agile is not so much a mindset, but more some of the tools that you would use if you are working in an agile environment. And that is the direction that the new PMBOK is going. It's the direction many organizations are going, is to become more agile. Now, if you're interested in learning a lot of Agile tools, then we have a separate course. It's a 3-day course. It's the Certified Agile Project Manager. So if you need an intense course, we have something else for you. But this is these 3 here with the asynchronous, and then the Being Agile and Doing Agile. That gives you the primer. That gives you the basic understanding of Agile project management. Then next, we have strategies for effectively leading through change. because as project managers, we're constantly creating change, and we have to understand how we bring people along. The technical side of it's the easy part. The people side of it is quite another matter because people resist change. So how do you, as a project manager, as a project team member, help people adapt and understand what your role is in helping them understand the changes, the purpose of the change, the value of the change, helping them through their struggles and so on, so that we can actually have a good result in the end because people are adapting to the new system or product or service. Then we've got the managing uncertainty and opportunity. That's risk management. And then the final one that's compulsory is the one-day project delivery principles. That's very much PMBOK, the new version of the PMBOK, and I'll be talking a little bit more about that one. So those can be taken in any order, although we are starting next Thursday, Friday with the Engaging Stakeholders course. So if you're ready to jump in, you can jump on in. And I think then the next one after that is one of the optional courses, which if you look down lower on the list, where the color changes, the one-day understanding project objectives. So that's about requirements. And that might be one, if you're ready to jump in, you could jump into that one. It's an optional credit. So let me just walk through the optional credits. So the compulsory we've talked through, and again, any sequence is fine, although this sequence is logical. Then an optional credit, and we have 4 optional credits, and you can decide what works for you based on your interests, based on your environment, based on your subject matter, and so on, based on the nature of your projects. If you are in engineering or construction, or if you work with a whole lot of contractors, then building strong vendor relationships, that would be a really good course. So it's procurement. It's procurement and contract management is what that is. If you're more involved in IT projects, perhaps educational projects, business projects, any project where you are responsible for defining scope and having to deal with requirements and scope, then this next course would be the perfect option for you. Third on the list, creating high-performance virtual teams. This could be for anyone, because if you work in a virtual environment, and many people do now, then this would be a good course to understand how you can be more effective as working in a virtual team. And then finally, getting to done, project closeout best practices. This is for anyone, because a lot of people struggle closing out their project. And of course, the best time to figure out how you're going to close out your project is at the beginning of the project. You have to start it well in order to finish it well. So we have those 4 options, and you can choose one of those. Now, if you see a couple here and go, I like a couple of these, but I'm not so keen about, I'm moving back to the previous slide, maybe you're going to say, I'm not so keen about those ones, and I'm maybe not even, just going backwards again to show you the ones that are compulsory. You might say, I don't really want to get into some of those compulsory ones, but I kind of like 2 or 3 of those options. Well, you can take that. It's flexible. You don't have to be registered in the whole certificate program. You can take it, one by one, just as you see fit. As your budget becomes available, as your schedule frees up, you can just take it as it comes. Okay, so essential schedule-wise, that's the next one we have officially scheduled, and that's going to be a version where we do the full half days for 6 days, 3 days 1 week, 3 days the next. Maybe we might be in a classroom in May. I don't know. I don't want to promise. But if you need to take project management essentials sooner because you want to start the program and you don't want to wait until next year or later until April of next year, please reach out and we'll see what other options we have for you to get you rolling in the program at your earliest convenience, if that's what you need to do. So just let us know. So here's the schedule. So with stakeholder and communication management, that one starts the end of next week. That's Thursday, Friday, and I'm teaching that one. And then we've got Amber doing the defining and managing project scope. This is the one about business objectives. And then we've got Daria, who's pretty terrific as well. And then I think it comes back to me and then back to Amber. So you're getting more variety. You're not listening to the same person for day after day after day after day. You might get the same instructor again, but you're only going to get them for two half-day sessions at a time. So it gives you variety. It gives you the opportunity to hear stories and experiences from people in different sectors. And then we've got Kevin, who's really terrific. He's doing the Agile courses. Then it's back to Daria, back to me, and so on. So, you know, there's always variety. So we're always rotating through with this type of program where it's just the 2 half days. So lots of variety. Makes it more interesting for sure. And then the final course that's compulsory is the project delivery principles. And I will talk a little bit more about that. And then there is an optional credit there in May. And then it starts again. Then we just start rotating through again. We start with the stakeholder one, and then we start with the requirements and so on. So if you've missed it, you can pick it up again. And it's usually not a full year. It's usually maybe 8 months later. We're rotating through again, and you can pick up the course. And some of you may say, but I started the old program. What am I going to do now? I've already started it. Well, don't worry. This change is not going to negatively impact you because after Project Management Essentials, you just launched into the new program as opposed to the older one. But what if you've taken either core skills or enhanced skills, or perhaps both? Well, if you've taken both, then no worries there either, because you can take one of the old optional credits, or you can take some of the new courses that like the project delivery principles would be a super good one, or the Agile courses. There's always options for you there. If you've taken one or the other, what I'm going to suggest is let's talk. Let's figure out what's going to be best for you in your environment. And we'll make sure you get the courses that are going to provide you the best value. So you're not going to be negatively impacted. And in fact, this program is a little shorter than the other program because, again, that's what people are looking for. They don't have days and days and days to invest. So this program is a little bit shorter. So if you don't know what's best for you, then where you go from here based on the courses you've taken, then just get in touch with me and we'll figure out, you know, what's going to be the best solution for you in terms of courses. So a little bit about PMBOK. So PMBOK version 7. Well, here's PMBOK version 6. You can see it's a fairly hefty thing. And you can see I've got a lot of notes and marks and tabs. It's a big book. Here is the new one. It's a whole lot smaller, a whole lot lighter. See, there's the one beside the other. You can see the difference. It's incredible. It's so much smaller. Now, that doesn't mean that the body of knowledge is smaller in terms of what we need to know. Just because you know, the PMBOK is smaller doesn't mean that it's going to be any easier. So the exam is still the same. The project management professional exam changed last January. It has not changed with this new PMBOK, so that's still the same. And this big one here is still a valid reference to prepare for the exam, and we still use all of these things. But what's happened is all of these tools from here have moved onto an online platform, so it all still exists. It's just now they are taking a different approach in terms of the kind of information they're putting in the body of knowledge, because the other one was just getting way too big and way too unwieldy. And also people were now taking a different view as to what's really important on projects. So version 6, still totally valid. So if you've studied some version 6, excellent. That hasn't changed. It's just now we have a slightly different approach in version 7. So smaller book. Instead of being all focused on knowledge areas and process groups and tools and techniques, now we're focused on the delivery of the project and the project outcomes. Because we used to be very focused on what we were doing, what are our deliverables, what work do I have to get done? That used to be very much our focus. Whereas now we're going, but what change are we creating in the organization? How does this project drive value? And will we actually get a reasonable return for the resources we're putting into this project? Now we're thinking about things in a slightly broader way. So that's where the new PMBOK comes in terms of the changes. And another thing that it really focuses on is several different approaches. It doesn't say you have to do just more of a standard defined method or waterfall, as we used to call it. You could have iterative methods, agile methods. So a variety of different approaches now are documented in the new PMBOK. So we have a little schematic here. So on the one side, the left-hand side, you've got the 6th edition, and on the right-hand side, you've got the 7th edition. So it's really quite different. So where you see on the left-hand side, knowledge areas, integration, management, scope, schedule, cost, quality, and so on. What we used to do is we used to do 5 of those in the core skills and 5 in enhanced skills. That's all changed. Now, but the thing is, we still have to do scope, we still have to do schedule, we still have to do budget. It's just that we're looking at it from a slightly different angle. So instead now, they have what they call project delivery principles and then performance domains. So when we do the course of project delivery principles, we're going to be getting into this type of information. We're going to have a lot of really interesting discussions. So I would like to just throw it out there, and I would like to ask, what do people think we're talking about when we say stewardship from a project management perspective? You can raise your hand. Mary Eleanor can unmute. You can unmute. Any thoughts on that? What are we talking about? Stewardship. Nothing rolling in, Mary Eleanor? Do you have anything rolling in on the chat? No? Okay, so stewardship. This is a fairly important topic now in project management, in that we have to be good stewards of the resources that have been entrusted to us. Now, the resources entrusted to us could be money, could be time, could be equipment, could be personnel, staff, like human resources. We have to make sure that the resources we're using are providing value for the organization. So this is a big part of getting away from that, what are the nuts and bolts, what are we doing, to looking at the change that we're actually creating within the organization. And are we being good stewards of the resources? Are we actually creating value? Are we thinking about this project holistically so that we're not just looking at it as a single element, we are looking at how it fits within our organization. So those are the kind of discussions we're going to have once we get into the course called Project Delivery Principles. So I would just suggest, just as a thought as you go away today, if you're working on a project, do think about stewardship and value. So not only just what it is you're doing on the project, but think about the change that you're actually creating in the organization. And with the resources that you're putting into it, is it providing appropriate value? Because these are the kind of conversations we want to start having on projects, not just deliverable projects, do this, do this, do this, do this. That still exists, but we need to raise it to a higher level now. So this Project Delivery Principles course, we're going to be looking at these different principles in more detail. So there's going to be a lot of good discussions about these different topics. And of course, stewardship and value are closely tied together. Team and stakeholders, closely tied together. Holistic thinking, extremely important as well. Leadership. And then we have more here on this page. Tailoring, because one size doesn't fit all. We have to be able to adapt our tools and our approaches based on the needs of the project. Opportunities and threats, of course, that's risk management. We've got a course on that. And resilience is also a major topic that we talk about these days, is because we have to be adaptable. We have to be resilient. You know, gone are the days when you could create the scope for the project and say, that's the scope, there it is, we're just going to do that. No, it's just not that simple, because our environment is constantly changing. So we need to change. We need to have systems to deal with the change, and we have to be adaptable and also be resilient, because sometimes change can be very stressful. And we actually have a course, 2 half days, on change management. Now, if people are really interested in change management, we have a more in-depth program on change management. So you can always ask us about that if that's of interest. But we do have the 2 half-day course. And then we also talk about performance domains. In some ways, kind of similar, because you can see stakeholders. You know, that's common with the delivery principles and team and so on. Life cycle planning, so some of that has to do, are we agile, are we doing waterfall, different ways of approaching a project. So this is the new course, the Project Delivery Principles. Now, if someone has their PMP already, so maybe you have colleagues that have their PMP, when of course they probably figure, hey, I'm there, I know it all, and I've done it, I passed the exam, they're finished. Well, not really, because the world continues to evolve. Project management evolves, our environment evolves, best practices evolve. This would be the perfect course for someone who already has their PMP as well. They could hop in here and just in 2 half days get a really good understanding of what's happening in version 7 of the PMBOK. And the way that we have this scheduled is this one is kind of late spring next year. So if you are able to jump in sooner as opposed to later, this might be one of the later courses, but you can take the courses in any sequence you want. All right. So there must be some questions out there. Does anybody have any questions? Mary Eleanor, maybe you can see if there's any questions coming in.
Can you hear me, Janice?
I can, now I can, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I have a glitch right now happening with Zoom. And so I am unable to see the chat. When I pull it up, it is a blank screen, which is very odd. But I do see that there are 3 comments there. So I just am unable to see them. So I'm wondering if you can.
Well, that's odd because I thought maybe you changed the settings because I wasn't seeing them earlier, and I thought, oh, that's just okay. The way you've got the settings set. But right. No, I don't see the chat either. Whoa, that's really different. That's very different. Okay, so I'm going to just go another way here and see if I can. No, I'm not.
What I might suggest is that if people have questions, they can raise their hand because we can see the hand raising function, or Janice will be able to see that. For some reason, my Zoom has entirely frozen. And so, but I'm happy that you're able to hear me. So perhaps if people want to raise their hand, and it should be just the raise hand, you should see the raise hand button at the bottom. And then we can certainly answer your question.
Actually, I'm even seeing that that's kind of disappeared here on my end. They must be doing an update to the platform.
So you're unable to see the raise hand function?
I'm unable to see the raise hand function. Yeah, that's definitely. But this doesn't, I mean, this may seem shocking that suddenly Zoom, which is a very stable platform, is having issues, but it is one of the things that we are dealing with constantly. Is there is no platform that is always perfect. It is something that is just a fact in our environment, and we have to adapt. And this can happen during the middle of a course. It can happen during the middle of a meeting, and but it is our new way of working. So yeah, and sometimes we do have some technical glitches. So I'm seeing under Q&A, yeah, I see you, Denny, there. Can we see the Q&A? I can't, yes, no, I'm not seeing any of the questions now that people are asking.
Now, Janice, you should be able to add, you might want to add Eutheny as a panelist. You would be able to do that, I believe. I can't seem to do that. Right now, but if you add her as a panelist, then she will be able to see.
Yeah,
no,
I can't do that.
You can't do that. Okay.
Can't do that either. Okay, so you know what we're going to do is I'm going to this slide here. Oops. I'm going to my final slide, which is just my slide there. Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay, so there we go. That's my final slide. There's my email address. So I'm just going to encourage people to get in touch if they have questions. I'm very good about responding to emails. So if you have any questions, shoot me an email. If it's a complicated question, then we're probably I'm going to say, hey, can I give you a call? Is there a time when we can chat? And we'll set that up. We'll make arrangements to have a chat. But I don't want anyone thinking that they're not sure whether the program's right for them, or thinking I don't know which courses I should take, which are the best ones for me, which option is best, or or wondering what you should do if you've already started the program and are going, but now I've done part of it, the old program, how do I complete the new program? So please just reach out and we will work it through and communicate with you that way. And our email, fortunately, is always working. So it won't be a problem. But sorry about that, folks, that people have questions and the platform is not being cooperative today.
Okay, there's a question. My colleague is sharing that there is a question, and Darcy, my colleague is indicating there's a question. Darcy, I wonder if you could just send that to me in a separate chat so that we might be able to answer the question. If you could just paste it so I can see it and then relay it to Janice. And while Darcy is doing that, I will just also reiterate that in addition to Janice's email, we will be sharing a series of emails starting before, you'll see it in your inbox before the end of the day today. It will have a recording of today's webinar, as well as a link to the certificate that I did supply in the chat earlier, as well as Janice's email address again. So if you do have any questions, you'll certainly see that email, and that will have everything that you will need to follow up and get the details that you need.
And I'll just mention in terms of my email address, where I'm going to be of assistance is which course is best for me. I've started the certificate. What do I do now? What option should I take? If it's anything regarding registration, course fees, that sort of thing, that's best to go straight through to Dalhousie on that one. It's more content questions that I'm going to be more the subject matter expert helping you with.
Mm-hmm. Okay, wonderful. So Darcy is just providing that, just typing that question out for me. I'm a PMP, a CAPM, that have been outside the field for 3 years. Would this be the right program for practical experience to get back to project management?
What I would suggest would be some of the optional credits. I think the being agile and doing agile would be ideal. The choosing the right approach. Those are each half days. The first one asynchronous and 2 half days. Because if you've been out of the field for a while, and I'm thinking then you probably wrote the PMP maybe 3, 4, or 5 years ago, then there would not have been any emphasis on agile. So the agile would be a really good one to jump into. The project delivery principles would also be really good, and the virtual teams, working with the virtual teams. The other one that would be covering new ground would be the project closeout best practices. So there's a number of those courses that would be ideal. You could take the whole program. You certainly could. Some of it's going to seem very familiar, but the ones that I just mentioned, I think, are where you're going to get the best value and you're going to find the most new material and new concepts that you can apply.
Fantastic. There is another question that Darcy is providing to me. And I'll just take this opportunity to also say, and Janice has mentioned before, that we do have the Agile Project Management Certificate as well. So we'll make sure that both the certificate that Janice has covered in detail today, as well as the Agile Project Management Certificate, that the links to both of those are included in the email follow-up. So you can see the difference between the two and see where you best fit. As Janice had mentioned, we will provide her email address directly, but as well, our folks in the faculty, Eutheny, who is on the call, is our program director for project management, both Agile and the one that was covered today. And she and her team can certainly answer some questions as well. All right, Darcy is just adding in another question from Crystal. I'd love to take the half-day courses next week, but have a half-hour-long conflict on one of those days. Would this be a major problem? And that's a great question, I think, overall, in terms of time conflict.
It is. If it's a course that's 2 half days, it's equivalent of a full day. Missing 30 minutes is usually not a problem. It's good if I know in advance what those 30 minutes are, and then I can maybe say, have a look at this, this, and this before, or at the end of the day between now and tomorrow, have a look at this particular exercise and so on. So yeah, 30 minutes is not a problem, Crystal. That'll be fine.
Okay, fantastic. That's great. Those are great questions and certainly apply to, more broad questions about just time conflicts, as well as, finding the right fit for you. So we'll leave it there for now, but certainly don't want to end the conversation there. If you have more questions, and especially questions that are specific to your circumstances, whether you're in the middle of a certificate or in the process of taking courses, feel free to reach out and see what the best next step is for you. Thank you so much, Janice. Apologies for the technical glitches, but I feel that we have overcome them, and we were happy to answer some questions nonetheless.
Yes.
And that's why it's so helpful to have those email follow-up. So keep an eye out in your inbox for more details. Thanks again, Janice, and thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. And enjoy the rest of your day. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.